In today's episode, we're exploring 5 horrifying encounters where people are eaten alive inside their car. From a mechanic's midnight breakdown that attracted a hungry grizzly bear, to a retiree's scenic stop that became her final destination. But first, let's begin with the first story where one man's stubborn independence cost him everything. It was November 15th, 2016, and the desolate stretch of Highway 191 cutting through Yellowstone National Park lay shrouded in darkness under a moonless Montana sky. The remote 2-lane road wound through dense wilderness for miles without a single streetlight or building, creating an eerie corridor where civilization felt like a distant memory. At 11 p.m. on this frigid autumn night, the temperature had already dropped below freezing, and a light snow was beginning to dust the asphalt. Frank Kowalski, 41, sat behind the wheel of his aging pickup truck as it rolled to a complete stop on the shoulder of the highway. The small-town mechanic from Bozeman had been driving home from a late emergency repair job in West Yellowstone, a routine trip he had made countless times over the past 15 years. Frank was known throughout his community for his stubborn independence and old-school approach to life. He refused to carry a cell phone, drove vehicles he rebuilt himself, and believed that modern conveniences made people soft and dependent. His 1987 Ford pickup had been making concerning noises for weeks, particularly from the transmission, but Frank had kept postponing the repairs. As a mechanic, he was confident he could nurse the truck along until he found time to properly diagnose and fix the problem. Tonight, however, his procrastination had finally caught up with him as the transmission gave out completely, leaving him stranded in one of the most remote and dangerous areas of the American wilderness. Frank's truck bed contained the remnants of his dinner, fast food wrappers and containers from a burger joint in West Yellowstone that he had eaten during his drive. The smell of grease and meat had been wafting from the open bed for hours, creating an aromatic trail that would prove fatally attractive to the park's wildlife. Grizzly bears are among North America's most powerful and dangerous predators, with adult males weighing between 400 and 800 pounds and possessing incredible strength capable of crushing bones with a single swipe. They have an extraordinary sense of smell that is 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's, allowing them to detect food sources from miles away. Grizzlies are opportunistic feeders that will investigate any potential food source, and they have learned to associate human activity with easy meals. During late fall, bears enter a phase called hyperphagia, where they consume massive amounts of food to prepare for winter hibernation, making them particularly aggressive and persistent when pursuing potential food sources. Frank made the decision to sleep in his truck cab until morning rather than attempt to walk for help in the dark through bear and wolf territory. He cracked his driver's side window about 2 inches to allow fresh air into the cab, then settled back in his seat with a blanket he kept behind the seat for emergencies. The veteran mechanic had no idea that his truck had already attracted the attention of a massive male grizzly bear that had been following the scent trail for over a mile. Around 2 a.m., the 800-pound grizzly discovered the source of the enticing food smells and began methodically investigating the vehicle. The bear's massive paws left deep scratches in the truck's paint as he explored every inch, standing on his hind legs to peer into the truck bed and sniffing around the cab. When Frank stirred and instinctively tried to start the engine, the sudden noise of the starter motor grinding against the dead transmission startled the already agitated bear. The grizzly reared up on his hind legs, standing nearly 9 feet tall, and brought his massive front paws down on the partially open driver's side window with devastating force. The impact shattered the glass completely, sending razor-sharp fragments flying throughout the cab as the bear's enormous head pushed through the opening. The grizzly's massive jaws clamped down on Frank's left shoulder and arm, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through bone and muscle, while his bite force exceeded 1,200 pounds per square inch. Frank's desperate screams echoed through the wilderness as the bear's powerful neck muscles began pulling him through the shattered window opening. The grizzly's instincts drove him to extract his prey from the confined space, using his incredible strength to drag Frank's body through the jagged glass frame. Frank's right arm flailed desperately as he tried to grab onto the steering wheel or door frame, but the bear's relentless pulling force was too powerful to resist. The razor-sharp glass fragments tore through his clothing and skin as the grizzly hauled him through the window opening, leaving deep lacerations across his torso and legs. Once the bear had successfully extracted Frank from the truck cab, the attack intensified on the open ground beside the vehicle. The grizzly's massive paws pinned Frank to the frozen asphalt while his jaws found Frank's neck and head, the massive teeth crushing through his skull and cervical vertebrae with sickening efficiency. Frank's body convulsed as the grizzly's assault continued, his blood pooling on the snow-dusted highway as the predator's natural feeding instincts took complete control. The bear's powerful claws raked across Frank's chest and abdomen, opening deep gashes that caused massive internal damage and blood loss. Within minutes, Frank's movements ceased as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed his system. The grizzly continued his attack on the roadway beside the destroyed truck, following his natural behavior of feeding in an open area where he could maintain awareness of his surroundings. Park rangers discovered the gruesome scene the following morning when Frank failed to arrive at work and his employer contacted authorities. Frank's body lay beside his truck on the highway, while the vehicle's driver's side window was completely destroyed. The grizzly was still in the area, showing no fear of the approaching vehicles. Wildlife officials made the decision to relocate the bear to a remote section of the park, rather than destroy him, as his behavior was considered natural predatory response to an available food source. Frank's death prompted renewed warnings about food storage in bear country and highlighted the dangers of traveling alone through wilderness areas without communication devices. His family struggled to understand how their capable, experienced relative had fallen victim to such a horrific attack. What happened next would prove that Frank's nightmare was just the beginning. Across the world in South Africa, another driver was about to discover that a simple wrong turn could lead straight into the jaws of death. It was July 8, 2014, and the dusty roads surrounding Kruger National Park shimmered under the intense heat of the South African summer. Marcus Webb, 34, gripped the steering wheel of his rental sedan as he squinted through the windshield at his outdated GPS device. The pharmaceutical sales representative from Johannesburg had been visiting clients in the rural communities near Kruger Park, trying to maximize his sales calls by working late into the evening. Marcus had a reputation among his colleagues for taking shortcuts and pushing his schedule to the limit, often driving unfamiliar routes in the dark to save time between appointments. His white rental sedan was equipped with heavily tinted windows that provided relief from the brutal African sun during the day, but now made it difficult to see the road clearly in the darkness. After missing a crucial turn in the darkness, Marcus found himself on an increasingly rough dirt road that seemed to be leading away from civilization rather than toward his hotel. What he didn't realize was that recent storm damage had created a large gap in Kruger Park's perimeter fencing, and his wrong turn had taken him directly through this breach into one of the most dangerous wildlife areas in Africa. African lions are apex predators that live in coordinated family groups called prides, with complex social structures and hunting strategies that have evolved over millions of years. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while females are the primary hunters with lightning-fast reflexes and incredible stealth. Lions are naturally curious about unusual objects in their territory and will investigate anything that seems out of place. They are also opportunistic predators that have learned to associate human activity with potential food sources. Instead of immediately reversing when he realized he was on an unmarked track, Marcus made the fatal decision to stop his car and turn on the interior light to check his paper map. The bright dome light illuminated his figure clearly through the sedan's windows, creating a beacon that was visible for hundreds of yards across the dark savanna. A pride of 4 lions, 1 dominant male and 3 females, had been resting near a watering hole about 200 yards from where Marcus stopped. The unusual sight of the stationary vehicle with its bright interior light immediately caught their attention, and their natural curiosity was piqued by this strange intrusion into their territory. The lions approached the car cautiously at first, circling the vehicle while Marcus remained obliviously focused on his map. The pride's dominant male, a massive specimen weighing over 400 pounds, moved to the front of the car while the 3 females positioned themselves along the sides, displaying the coordinated hunting behavior that made lions such effective predators. When Marcus finally looked up from his map and saw the enormous male lion standing directly in front of his headlights, panic overtook him completely. He fumbled with the ignition key, his hands shaking as he tried to start the engine and escape the nightmare that had materialized around him. The engine turned over, but immediately stalled as Marcus's panicked movements caused him to flood the motor. The sudden noise and vibration of the failed start attempt triggered the lion's predatory instincts, transforming them from curious observers into active hunters. The dominant male launched himself onto the sedan's hood with devastating force, his 400-pound frame denting the metal and cracking the windshield on impact. His massive claws found purchase on the car's surface as he began attacking the glass barrier that separated him from his prey. The 3 females simultaneously attacked the sides of the vehicle, their powerful paws and claws striking the windows and doors with coordinated precision. The tinted glass began to spider and crack under the relentless assault as the lion's natural hunting instincts drove them to break through the barrier. The windshield finally gave way under the male lion's lion's assault, exploding inward in a shower of safety glass that filled the car's interior. The massive predator's head and shoulders pushed through the opening as his powerful jaws sought their target. Marcus tried to climb into the back seat to escape, but the confined space of the sedan gave him nowhere to go as the lion's massive paw reached through the shattered windshield and caught his shirt. The razor-sharp claws raked across his chest and arms, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely. The lion's jaws found Marcus's head and neck, the massive teeth crushing through bone and muscle with the efficiency of millions of years of evolutionary perfection. The other lions had broken through the side windows and were now inside the vehicle, their combined weight and fury turning the sedan into a death trap. Marcus's struggles ceased within minutes as the pride's coordinated attack overwhelmed him completely. The lions fed inside the destroyed vehicle, their natural feeding behavior taking over as they consumed their prey in the confined space that had become his tomb. Park officials discovered the scene the following day when Marcus failed to return his rental car. The sedan was completely destroyed, its windows shattered and body panels torn apart by the lion's assault. Marcus's briefcase remained untouched in the back seat, a grim reminder of the business trip that had ended in tragedy. The investigation revealed that Marcus had inadvertently driven through the damaged section of park fencing, entering lion territory without realizing the danger. The incident prompted immediate repairs to the perimeter fence and additional warning signs for drivers in the area. But the horror was far from over. In the Florida Everglades, rising floodwaters were about to trap another victim, with some of nature's most patient and deadly predators. It was September 23, 2015, and Ruby Martinez, 56, stood on the porch of her farmhouse watching the water creep steadily higher around her property. The fiercely independent widow had refused all evacuation orders, determined to protect the farm she and her late husband had built together over 25 years. As the floodwater reached the level of her front porch, Ruby finally accepted that she needed to reach higher ground. American alligators are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years, perfectly adapted for life in aquatic environments. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. During flood conditions, alligators become particularly aggressive as they compete for limited territory and food sources. Ruby's truck made it about halfway to the highway before the engine began to sputter and lose power. The floodwater had reached the level of the truck's air intake, and muddy water was being sucked into the engine with each breath. The motor coughed once more, and then died completely, leaving Ruby stranded in 3 feet of murky water with darkness falling rapidly around her. As Ruby sat in the cab trying to formulate a plan, she began to notice ripples in the water around her truck that weren't caused by the current. Something large was moving beneath the surface, creating V-shaped wakes that converged on her position from multiple directions. The first alligator to reach the truck was a massive bull measuring over 12 feet in length and weighing nearly 800 pounds. Ruby remained in the cab as the alligator began bumping against the vehicle's sides, testing its stability and searching for the source of the vibrations and sounds coming from inside. More alligators were drawn to the commotion, their primitive brains interpreting the sounds and movements as signs of potential prey. Within minutes, Ruby's truck was surrounded by at least 6 large alligators, all investigating the unusual object that had appeared in their flooded territory. The water level continued to rise as the storm's remnants dumped more rain on the already saturated landscape. What had been 3 feet of water when Ruby first became stranded was now approaching 4 feet, bringing the flood level dangerously close to the truck's windows. Ruby tried desperately to restart the engine, but the waterlogged motor refused to turn over. Her cell phone showed no signal in the remote area, and she realized that her only option was to wait for rescue or attempt to wade through the alligator-infested water to reach higher ground. As the water reached the level of the truck's door handles, Ruby made the fatal decision to abandon the vehicle. She opened the driver's side door and stepped into the murky floodwater, hoping to wade the remaining distance to the elevated highway about a quarter mile away. The moment Ruby's feet touched the water, the largest bull alligator detected the vibrations and movement of potential prey entering his domain. The massive reptile moved through the water with surprising speed and stealth, his powerful tail propelling him toward Ruby's position. Ruby had taken only a few steps from the truck when she felt something massive brush against her legs beneath the murky surface. She tried to retreat back to the vehicle, but the bull alligator's powerful jaws clamped down on her thigh with devastating force. The alligator's teeth, designed for gripping and holding prey, punctured through her jeans and deep into the muscle beneath. creating wounds that immediately began bleeding into the murky water. Ruby's screams echoed across the flooded landscape as the massive reptile began his death roll, spinning his powerful body to disorient and drown his prey. The scent of blood in the water triggered a feeding frenzy among the other alligators surrounding the area. A second large male moved in from Ruby's left side, his jaws finding her arm as she tried desperately to grab onto the truck's door handle. Ruby's struggles grew weaker as the coordinated attack of multiple alligators proved unsurvivable. The prehistoric predator's natural hunting behavior took over as they dragged her away from the truck into deeper water where their feeding instincts could be fully satisfied. Within minutes, Ruby's movements ceased as massive blood loss and drowning overwhelmed her system. The alligators continued their attack in the open floodwater, following their natural behavior of feeding in their preferred aquatic environment, rather than attempting to access the confined space of the vehicle. Rescue teams discovered Ruby's abandoned truck 2 days later when the floodwaters finally began to recede. The vehicle showed signs of alligator investigation, scratches on the paint, and dents from their powerful bodies, but remained largely intact. Ruby's body was recovered several hundred yards away in a drainage canal, bearing the unmistakable marks of multiple alligator attacks. The incident prompted renewed warnings about the dangers of attempting to wade through flood zones, particularly in areas known to harbor large alligator populations. Ruby's death became a tragic reminder that natural disasters could create unexpected dangers as displaced wildlife sought refuge in areas normally considered safe. Yet nature wasn't finished with its deadly demonstrations. In the remote forests of Canada, a young surveyor's curiosity was about to prove fatal when he encountered a protective mother with cubs. It was April 12, 2017, and Trevor Nakamura, 28, carefully maneuvered his company SUV along the rutted logging road in the dense forests of British Columbia. The recent college graduate had been working as a land surveyor for a timber company for only 6 months, mapping remote forest areas for potential logging operations. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are among the most dangerous animals in the wilderness, as their protective instincts make them extremely aggressive toward any perceived threat to their offspring. While taking measurements near a creek, Trevor spotted a black bear with 2 cubs about 100 yards away. Instead of immediately leaving the area as wildlife safety protocols dictated, Trevor made the decision to retreat to his SUV and wait for the bears to move on. He reasoned that he could eat his lunch while observing the animals from a safe distance, not realizing that he had parked his vehicle directly in the path the bears needed to take to reach their den site. After about 20 minutes, the mother bear began moving toward Trevor's SUV, with her cubs following behind her. The sow began circling the SUV, standing on her hind legs to peer through the windows, while making huffing sounds that indicated her growing stress and anger. Trevor finally realized that the situation was becoming dangerous and decided to start his engine and leave the area. However, the sound of the motor starting triggered the mother bear's protective instincts completely. She interpreted the noise as a threat to her cubs and launched an immediate attack on the vehicle. The 350-pound sow reared up on her hind legs and brought her massive front paws down on the SUV's hood with devastating force. In desperation, Trevor cracked his window about 2 inches and tried to scare the bear away with an air horn he kept in his emergency kit. The bear's massive paw caught the edge of the cracked window and shattered it completely, sending glass fragments flying throughout the SUV's interior. Trevor tried to climb into the back seat to escape, but the confined space of the vehicle gave him nowhere to go as 350 pounds of fury forced its way through the broken window. The sow's powerful jaws found Trevor's shoulder and arm, her teeth designed for crushing bones and tearing flesh. The bear's bite force exceeded 800 pounds per square inch as she shook her victim like a rag doll, slamming his body against the SUV's interior surfaces. Trevor's desperate screams echoed through the forest as the mother bear's claws raked across his chest and abdomen, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the attack until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been eliminated. The sow's massive weight pressed down on Trevor's torso as she maintained her grip on his shoulder, her claws continuing to inflict devastating wounds across his arms and chest. Trevor's struggles grew weaker as blood loss and trauma overwhelmed his system. Within minutes, Trevor's movements ceased as the mother bear's protective fury proved fatal. The sow continued her attack for several more minutes before finally backing out of the destroyed SUV. Satisfied that the threat to her cubs had been neutralized, the mother bear gathered her confused cubs and led them away from the scene, disappearing into the dense forest as quickly as she had appeared. The SUV sat silent and destroyed in the small clearing, its windows shattered and interior stained with blood. Logging crews discovered the scene 3 days later, when Trevor failed to report in to his supervisors. The company SUV was barely recognizable, its driver's side completely destroyed by the bear's assault. Trevor's surveying equipment remained untouched in the back of the vehicle, a grim reminder of the work that would never be completed. The investigation revealed that Trevor had violated basic wildlife safety protocols by remaining in an area with bears and cubs present. His death prompted the timber company to implement mandatory emergency communication devices for all solo workers and enhanced wildlife safety training for employees working in remote areas. Our final story takes us to the desert Southwest, where one woman's passion for photography would lead her into the territory of North America's most efficient predator. It was January 19, 2018, and the rugged landscape of Big Bend National Park stretched endlessly under the vast Texas sky, its ancient mountains and desert valleys painted in shades of gold and crimson by the setting sun. Dorothy Hensley, known to everyone as Dot, carefully positioned her small RV at a scenic overlook that provided spectacular views of the Chisos Mountains and the winding Rio Grande Valley below. The 63-year-old retired librarian from Dallas was on her first solo road trip since her husband's death 2 years earlier, following a carefully planned route through the Southwest's most beautiful national parks. Dot had always been a meticulous planner, and her RV was equipped with detailed guidebooks, maps, and an expensive camera system that she used to document her journey. The overlook where Dot had parked was located at the end of a narrow dirt road, miles from the nearest visitor facilities and completely isolated from other travelers. The location offered unobstructed views of the desert landscape, making it perfect for the sunset photography session she had planned as the highlight of her day in Big Bend. As the sun began to set, Dot opened her RV's door to allow better ventilation and to hear the sounds of the desert evening. She had read that the acoustic experience was an important part of appreciating the park's natural beauty, and she wanted to fully immerse herself in the wilderness environment. Mountain lions are North America's most widely distributed wildland animal, with territories that can span over 100 square miles for adult males. They are solitary predators with incredible stealth and hunting abilities, capable of stalking prey for hours without being detected. Adult males can weigh up to 220 pounds and possess powerful hind legs that allow them to leap over 15 feet vertically and 40 feet horizontally. Mountain lions are territorial animals that will investigate any unusual activity in their domain, and they have learned to associate human scents and sounds with potential food sources. Dot settled into her RV's dinette area with her camera and laptop, reviewing the photographs she had taken throughout the day, while the desert sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors outside her open door. She was completely absorbed in her work, editing images and making notes about the locations where each shot had been taken. What Dot didn't realize was that her RV had been under observation for over an hour by a large male mountain lion that considered this area part of his established territory. The 180-pound cat had been tracking the unusual scents and sounds coming from the strange shelter that had appeared in his domain. As darkness fell across the desert, Dot decided to step outside her RV to capture some nighttime photographs of the star-filled sky. She gathered her camera gear and stepped out onto the rocky ground of the overlook, moving about 20 yards away from her vehicle to set up her tripod. The mountain lion had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. The moment Dot moved away from the safety of her vehicle and into the open desert terrain, the big cat began his approach. His padded paws made no sound on the rocky ground as he descended from his observation point. Dot was completely focused on adjusting her camera settings when the mountain lion struck. The attack came without warning, the 180-pound predator launching himself through the air in a perfectly executed ambush that covered the distance between them in a single powerful leap. The mountain lion's powerful jaws found Dot's neck and head, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through bone and muscle with devastating efficiency. The impact knocked Dot to the ground, her expensive camera equipment scattering across the rocky desert floor. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across her back and shoulders, opening deep gashes that immediately began bleeding profusely onto the desert sand. Following his natural hunting instincts, the big cat began dragging Dot's body away from the open area toward a more secluded location among the rocky outcroppings. Dot's struggles grew weaker as massive blood loss and spinal trauma overwhelmed her system. Within minutes, her movements ceased as the mountain lion dragged her body into a narrow canyon about 100 yards from the RV. Park rangers discovered Dot's abandoned RV 2 days later when she failed to check in at the visitor center. Her scattered camera equipment near the overlook told the story of what had occurred. Search teams with tracking dogs located her remains in the rocky canyon, where the mountain lion had dragged her body. The mountain lion was eventually tracked and relocated to a more remote area of the park. The incident prompted enhanced warnings about solo camping in mountain lion habitat and recommendations for travelers to remain near their vehicles during nighttime hours. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've seen the most terrifying death traps in the wilderness, we're just getting started. Click the next video, we'll show you why sometimes the greatest danger isn't being stranded in the wilderness.